Have you ever found yourself caught in the strange experience of someone repeatedly appearing in your thoughts? You're standing in line at the grocery store when their face surfaces in your mind. You're driving to work and suddenly wonder what they might be doing right now. It's almost as if they've taken up permanent residence in your consciousness, appearing without invitation at the most random moments. This experience isn't just common, it's deeply significant. A fascinating Harvard study revealed that our minds spend nearly 47% of waking hours thinking about something other than what we're currently doing. And a substantial portion of that mental wandering involves specific people who've inexplicably taken residence in our thoughts. But why them? Why do certain people captivate our mental landscape while others, even those we see regularly, barely register? The conventional wisdom suggests it's just random neural firing, perhaps mixed with attraction or unresolved emotions. But what if there's something far more profound happening? Carl Jung, the revolutionary psychologist who dared to challenge even his mentor Freud, offered an explanation that transforms not just how we understand these persistent thoughts, but how we understand ourselves. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Jung wrote in one of his most penetrating insights, "This deceptively simple observation contains a profound truth that most people never discover in their lifetime. When someone occupies your thoughts persistently, they're carrying something that belongs to you, not physically, but psychologically." Jung called this mechanism projection, but unlike how we typically use that term today, he saw it as a doorway to profound self-discovery, rather than merely a defense mechanism. When someone won't leave your thoughts, they're often mirroring qualities, potentials, and aspects of yourself that haven't been fully acknowledged or integrated into your conscious identity. Consider Emma's experience. A dedicated teacher in her 30s, she found herself inexplicably preoccupied with thoughts of a new colleague who seemed effortlessly confident in faculty meetings, speaking up without hesitation, challenging the principal's ideas, and advocating boldly for changes. Emma found herself thinking about this colleague constantly, analyzing her interactions and feeling a complex mixture of admiration and irritation. Traditional psychology might suggest Emma had a crush or felt threatened. But in therapy, Emma discovered something far more revealing. These persistent thoughts weren't really about her colleague at all. They were about Emma's own unexpressed desire for confidence and self-assertion, qualities she had suppressed throughout her life to maintain harmony and please others. As Emma began the challenging work of expressing these qualities herself, speaking up in meetings, setting boundaries with demanding parents, advocating for her ideas, something remarkable happened. Her obsessive thoughts about her colleague naturally diminished. The mirror was no longer needed once Emma could see herself clearly. This pattern repeats itself again and again in different contexts. The person who irritates you with their spontaneity might be reflecting your own suppressed desire for freedom. The person whose ambition you find both compelling and off-putting might be mirroring your own buried drive for achievement. The person whose emotional openness both attracts and unnerves you might be reflecting qualities you've denied in yourself. The question isn't just, who can't you stop thinking about? It's, what are these thoughts revealing about you? Jung introduced a concept that helps explain why certain people captivate our thoughts: the shadow. Unlike Freud's notion of repression, which centered primarily on instinctual urges like intimacy and aggression, Jung's shadow encompasses the full range of human potentials and qualities that haven't found expression in our conscious personality. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, Jung wrote. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This recognition is often difficult and uncomfortable, which is why we tend to project these qualities onto others rather than acknowledging them in ourselves. Think of the shadow as your psychological blind spot, similar to the area a car's side mirrors can't see. just as a driver needs to actively check their blind spot to avoid accidents, we need to consciously examine our shadow to avoid psychological collisions. The people who repeatedly appear in your thoughts often represent what's hiding in this blind spot. Here's where it gets uncomfortable but illuminating. The qualities that provoke your strongest reactions in others, whether attraction or aversion, are often the exact qualities you're denying in yourself. This explains why we sometimes have such disproportionate emotional responses to certain people. They're not just people, they're mirrors reflecting parts of ourselves we've disowned. Consider Richard's experience. A structured, disciplined financial analyst who built his identity around reliability and methodical planning, Richard couldn't stop thinking about an artist acquaintance who lived what Richard initially described as a chaotic and impractical creative life. Richard found himself thinking about this person constantly, often with a mixture of fascination and judgment. Through depth work, Richard recognized that his obsessive thoughts revealed his own suppressed creativity and spontaneity, qualities he had sacrificed in pursuit of financial security and social approval. As a child, Richard had shown remarkable artistic talent, but subtle family messages about responsible careers had led him to bury these qualities. As Richard began honoring his creative impulses by taking an evening art class and allowing himself more spontaneity in his daily life, his preoccupation with the artist began to fade. The artist had served his purpose as a mirror for Richard's shadow, and once Richard acknowledged and began to integrate these disowned qualities, the mirror was no longer necessary. When someone occupies your thoughts, they're often embodying your shadow qualities, the parts of yourself you've disowned but desperately need to integrate for psychological wholeness. This is why conventional advice to just stop thinking about them rarely works. Your mind's persistence isn't random pathology, but purposeful guidance. It's trying to show you something important about yourself. Beyond the shadow, Jung proposed that we all carry unconscious complementary gender aspects, the anima, feminine qualities in men, and animus, masculine qualities in women. While Jung's gender framework reflected his era and would be expanded today to accommodate more fluid understandings of gender, the core psychological principle remains powerful. We all contain complementary qualities that seek expression, and these inner counterparts often drive our attractions and preoccupations with others. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed, Jung observed. This transformation often begins with persistent thoughts about someone who embodies these complementary qualities. Consider how this might manifest in today's world. A highly analytical software engineer might find themselves thinking constantly about someone who approaches problems with intuition and emotional intelligence. A person focused primarily on caring for others might be inexplicably drawn to someone who embodies independence and self-assertion. These attractions aren't just about the other person. They're about the completion you seek within yourself. This dynamic creates a powerful psychological magnetism between people with complementary qualities, explaining why we are sometimes inexplicably drawn to people who possess what we lack. The intensity of this attraction often correlates with how deeply we've suppressed these complementary aspects within ourselves. When someone of the opposite gender, or whoever embodies these complementary qualities for you, dominates your thoughts, they may be activating these archetypal patterns within your psyche. These thoughts aren't just about the other person. They're about the wholeness you seek within yourself. Nowhere is Jung's psychology more potent and more misunderstood than in the realm of romantic attraction and obsession. When someone lingers in your thoughts long after they've left your life, it's easy to label it heartbreak or unrequited love. But Jung recognized this fixation as the psyche's compensatory function, a desperate bid for wholeness through projection. When traits vital to our psychological completeness remain repressed, the psyche effectively outsources them to others. We then chase these external carriers of our own disowned qualities, mistaking the pursuit of self-discovery for the pursuit of romance. Consider Maya's experience. A hyper-rational attorney who'd built her identity around intellectual analysis and emotional discipline, Maya became consumed by thoughts of a man she met once at a wellness retreat. He approached life with emotional fluidity and spiritual curiosity, qualities Maya had exiled from her consciousness to survive the relentless demands of her profession. Her fixation wasn't really about him, but about the tension between her rigid persona and the vulnerability and intuition he mirrored. Jung called this tension the transcendent function, a psychic bridge between opposites that fuels transformation. When Maya began journaling to explore her stifled creativity and emotional life, the obsession gradually dissolved, not as loss, but as integration. This pattern isn't limited by gender. Take Daniel, a pragmatic engineering manager who couldn't shake thoughts about a warm, nurturing woman he'd briefly dated. What he experienced as romantic longing was actually symbolic. His anima, inner feminine, signaling that his path to wholeness required the integration of emotional expressiveness and receptivity. By volunteering at an animal shelter where he could nurture and connect without compromising his analytical strengths, he began integrating these qualities rather than projecting them. Jung termed this process enantiodromia, the psyche's revolt against one-sidedness by manifesting its opposite. The person haunting your thoughts is neither soulmate nor tormentor, but a mirror held up to your unlived potential. So when romantic obsession strikes, ask yourself Jung's penetrating question: what does this compel me to reclaim? The answer won't free you from love. It will free you through love, transforming projection into integration. Jung's concept of archetypes adds another dimension to understanding obsessive thoughts. Sometimes, the people who occupy our minds represent universal patterns that connect to shared human experiences. The collective unconscious can be understood as humanity's shared psychological inheritance, like a vast psychological library that every human mind can access without conscious awareness. It contains patterns and symbols that resonate across cultures and throughout history. When someone won't leave your thoughts, they may be activating archetypal energies within you. That friend who launched a successful startup might represent your unexpressed desire to create something meaningful in the world. The person who speaks their truth fearlessly might be activating your need for authentic self-expression. The calm, centered person might highlight your own need for greater mindfulness and presence. The intensity of your preoccupation often correlates with the archetypal significance of what they represent in your life's journey. Pay attention not just to who occupies your thoughts, but to which archetypal energies they might be carrying for you. Jung identified the transcendent function as the psyche's ability to unite opposites, creating something new that transcends both sides. Think of it as your mind's natural problem-solving engine that works not through elimination of tension, but through creative synthesis. The confrontation of the two positions generates a tension charged with energy and creates a living third thing, a movement out of the suspension between opposites, a birth of something new, Jung wrote. In simpler terms, the transcendent function is your mind's way of resolving internal conflicts by creating a third, more integrated position. Consider this pattern. Are you rigidly organized but can't stop thinking about someone spontaneous and free-spirited? Are you emotionally expressive but fixated on someone who approaches life with cool logic? Your mind isn't tormenting you. It's trying to help you find balance through the integration of apparent opposites. When someone occupies your thoughts, they often represent psychological opposites seeking integration. Rather than trying to eliminate this tension, which rarely works, Jung would encourage working with it creatively to discover what new perspective might emerge from the integration of apparently contradictory positions. One of Jung's most fascinating concepts was synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by cause and effect, but reveal underlying patterns connecting mind and matter. This perspective suggests that your persistent thoughts about someone might create seemingly coincidental but meaningful connections involving them. Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see, Jung wrote. This isn't mystical thinking, but recognition of patterns that conventional causal thinking might miss. To visualize the difference between synchronicity and causality. Causality is like a straight line where A directly causes B, you call someone, then they appear. Synchronicity is like parallel timelines that suddenly intersect in meaningful ways. You think intensely about someone you haven't seen in years, then unexpectedly encounter them the next day. Have you ever thought intensely about someone, only to receive a message from them moments later? Have you dreamed about a long-lost friend, only to run into them the next day? Jung would say these aren't mere coincidences, but manifestations of deeper patterns connecting your inner psychological state with outer events. Pay attention to synchronicities involving people who occupy your thoughts. They may reveal deeper patterns of meaning that connect your inner psychological state with outer events. These meaningful coincidences often provide valuable guidance during important life transitions or decisions. Jung believed the unconscious serves a compensatory function, balancing our conscious attitudes by bringing forward what we've neglected. This extends to our persistent thoughts about others. The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good, Jung noted. When someone appears repeatedly in your thoughts or dreams, they may represent qualities your psyche needs to achieve greater balance. Consider Elena, a highly intellectual academic who found herself preoccupied with thoughts of a colleague who approached work with passion and emotional engagement. These thoughts weren't random. They represented her psyche's attempt to balance her overly intellectual approach with emotional intelligence. As Elena incorporated more emotional awareness into her life, her fixation naturally dissolved, having served its purpose in her psychological development. This compensatory function explains why the people who occupy our thoughts often change during different life phases. As our conscious attitude shifts, so do the qualities we need to integrate for balance. The business person may find themselves thinking about artists during periods of rigid focus on work, while the artist might fixate on organized, disciplined individuals during chaotic creative periods. Jung developed a practical technique called active imagination, essentially having a conversation with the figures who appear in your thoughts. Rather than being passively controlled by thoughts of someone, you can actively engage with what they represent. Here's how it works. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Visualize the person standing before you. Ask them directly, "Why are you in my thoughts? What do you represent for me?" Allow their response to come from your imagination without censoring or directing it. Sarah used this technique with the ex-boyfriend she couldn't stop thinking about. Instead of contacting him, which would have been problematic since he was now married, she had an imaginary conversation where she asked why he kept appearing in her thoughts. To her surprise, her imagination responded with insights about her unacknowledged desire for creative self-expression, a quality her ex had embodied, but that she had never developed in herself. This insight allowed her to redirect her energy into writing, and her thoughts about her ex naturally diminished. This practice transforms passive obsession into active insight. Have you ever tried directly engaging with the figures who occupy your thoughts? What might they tell you if given a voice? Jung believed the ultimate goal of psychological development is individuation, the process of integrating unconscious elements into consciousness to become more fully who you truly are. Persistent thoughts about others often arise during critical phases of this journey. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Jung wrote, "The people who occupy our thoughts are often guides on this path, showing us aspects of ourselves we need to acknowledge and integrate." Consider someone experiencing what we might call a midlife crisis. They can't stop thinking about a younger person who pursues creative projects and takes risks they've always avoided. These persistent thoughts might be signaling an important developmental transition, their psyche demanding the integration of creative qualities they abandoned years ago. The individuation process isn't about eliminating aspects of yourself or becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully who you already are by integrating disowned or undeveloped aspects of your personality. The people who occupy your thoughts are often crucial guides on this journey. How can you apply Jung's insights to transform your persistent thoughts from obsession to insight? Here's a practical approach. Start by journaling about who occupies your thoughts. Write down not just who you're thinking about, but specifically which of their qualities draw your attention most strongly. Be honest about what attracts or repels you about them. Notice which aspects of this person evoke the strongest emotional reactions, positive or negative. Jung believed our strongest reactions often signal our most important projections. For each quality you've identified, ask yourself, how might this quality represent something within me seeking expression or acknowledgement? Look for both positive qualities you admire and negative qualities that irritate you. Consider whether you've been drawn to or repelled by similar qualities in others throughout your life. Jung found that persistent projection patterns often reveal our most important developmental tasks. Engage in an imaginary dialogue with the person who occupies your thoughts. Ask what message they have for you and listen without judgment to what emerges. Pay attention to dreams involving this person, as they often reveal deeper unconscious connections and meanings beyond what your conscious mind has recognized. Once you've identified qualities you need to develop, find small, concrete ways to express them in your daily life. Jung emphasized that psychological integration must be accompanied by real-world action. A client who used this approach to transform obsessive thoughts about a charismatic colleague began by recognizing and developing her own leadership qualities, and not only stopped fixating on her colleague, but ultimately found more fulfillment in her own career. The uncomfortable truth is that your obsessive thoughts aren't the problem. They're the solution your mind is offering to help you become whole. Will you dismiss these thoughts as meaningless obsession? Or will you see them as messengers guiding you toward becoming more fully yourself? Carl Jung's understanding of the unconscious reveals that the people who occupy our thoughts aren't random mental intrusions, but meaningful psychological messengers. They show us parts of ourselves we've disowned, denied, or failed to develop. Parts that seek integration for our greater wholeness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Jung warned, the people who dominate your thoughts are often keys to understanding the unconscious patterns shaping your experience. It's worth noting that while Jung's theories offer profound psychological insights, they've been debated within psychological circles. Some modern researchers question the empirical basis of Jung's ideas, while others find remarkable parallels between Jungian concepts and emerging findings in neuroscience and consciousness studies. Contemporary psychology continues to wrestle with Jung's legacy, finding some concepts ahead of their time while questioning others. By working with rather than against these thought patterns, by seeing them as messengers rather than obstacles, you transform obsession into insight, projection into self-knowledge. The mind that seems to torment you with persistent thoughts about someone is actually trying to guide you toward becoming more fully yourself. The next time you find yourself thinking repeatedly about someone, remember, it's not just about them, it's about you, your shadow, your anima or animus, your archetypal connections, your journey toward wholeness. What parts of yourself might you reclaim today? Is your mind randomly fixating on people? Or is it trying to show you parts of yourself you've been ignoring? What has been your experience with persistent thoughts about others? Did they reveal something about yourself you hadn't recognized? Remember, what you seek in others has been within you all along. The person you can't stop thinking about might just be the key to unlocking your authentic self. If you found this insight meaningful, consider sharing it with someone who might be caught in the same spiral of thought. Leave a comment and let us know. What have you learned from the people who live rent-free in your mind? And if you'd like to keep exploring the deep architecture of human psychology and the wisdom of Jung, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It helps us bring more of these timeless ideas to those who need them most.